Football fanatics, welcome back to the Sports Zone live from Sportsnaut. We appreciate you guys being with us here on Championship Sunday. Woo! Talk about some games, some interesting stuff happened. Do us a favor, if you don't already subscribe here to the Sportsnaut YouTube channel, wherever you're watching us, please head over to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. Give us a thumbs up too if you would. We appreciate it. We have a show every Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. I am Scott Gulbransen. I'm a writer, editor, host over at sportsnaut.com, joined by my partner, Ryan Dyrud. He's the founder of the LA Football Network. And we're going to jump right into the game here, or games, I should say. We'll start with the latest one, Ryan. I mean, 34-31. The 49ers are headed back to the Super Bowl for the eighth time. They have 5 Lombardi trophies, correct? And They're going for number 6. They will face the Kansas City Chiefs in Las Vegas, Super Bowl 58. And this game, tale of two halves. The Lions jump out to a 17-7 lead at halftime. They go in at halftime, and boy, I don't know what happened. I don't know if they took their foot off the gas, came back out. San Francisco, a different team, and outscores them 27-14 in the second half and to win the game. And not only that, questionable coaching calls, so much to talk about in this game. But of course, in the earlier game, the Chiefs topped Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, and we'll get into that one too. But I just want to get your take. I mean, the first one, not as exciting as we thought. The Chiefs kind of ran away with it. I'm proud to say I did pick them in our editors pool, our editors predictions up on the site. I just had a feeling. We talked about it right on Wednesday. I said, Mahomes, it's hard to bet against him. I thought the Ravens could win, but they didn't. And then this 49er game, you thought the 49ers would win. And we'll start there, Ryan. That first half, the 49ers looked like they might be the second home team to lose.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, the tale of two halves. And let me say first, the script is alive and well for the NFL. I just want to say, I don't actually believe that. It's fun to play around. I don't actually believe there's really a script. I mean, it's sure, you can kind of lean into it when you see kind of what transpired in both of these games. And we'll get into it, obviously. But yeah, truly a tale of two halves. It was actually, I believe, 24-7 Lions. So they only scored 7 points in the second half. And it was on that very end of the game. So the offense didn't really show up in the second half, and we're going to get to the negatives. Well, we're going to talk about Dan Campbell. We're going to talk about the execution and all that. But first, I've been very critical of Kyle Shanahan and this 49ers team, and I just want to give them a lot of credit because they came out in that second half and he had those guys ready, and they got some breaks, they got some things go their way, but that's the way the NFL and football in general works. Is when you get those breaks, how do you capitalize on them? And they certainly did, scoring on 3 straight possessions, field goal, touchdown. And it felt like, after the failed, they get the field goal, Lions get the ball back, Lions drive the field. So, okay, take a deep breath. Any Lions fans out there, they're still moving the ball. And then when they went for it on that 4th down and didn't convert, that's when you could tell, like, all right, if the Niners go down and score here, I think that's probably going to be it because they have all the momentum. They have all the stuff in their wheelhouse of what they need to do. But yeah, give credit to those guys. And Kyle Shanahan, I thought, called a much better game this game. I thought Brock Purdy played very well. Started off really bad. Everyone played bad in that first half, but he played much better in the second half and kind of leaned on, his pillars on that offense. So yeah, it was a fun game as a fan to watch. Obviously a brutal game for Lions fans, out here. Everyone knows that watch this show. I cover the LA teams out here. I'm sure Lions fans today are feeling a lot like Chargers fans were feeling 2 years ago when they had that big lead on the Jaguars and blew it in the wild card round of the playoffs and lost by 1 point. So similar feeling, I'm sure, among the fan bases. But tale of two halves, and it came down to the execution by the Niners in that second half.
Yeah, and it's just crazy if you I'm looking at the numbers here up on the NFL website. Detroit, more first downs than San Francisco. Third down, they were 6-12 both sides. Detroit had 442 yards total, the 49ers 413. Detroit had 6 more offensive plays. They gained a quarter yard less on the average. And rushing, they had 182 yards to San Francisco's 155. Passing, 260 to San Francisco's 258. Turnovers were matched at 1 apiece. Both had 4 touchdowns. Of course, the 49ers had 2 or 3 field goals, and the Detroit Lions only took the 1 field goal. San Francisco did have the time of possession, help, I think, mostly by that fourth quarter. You look at this, though, and that's what I want to get to, because, I mean, the performances, David Montgomery actually 93 yards on 15 carries. Jamar Gibbs 12-45 on the San Francisco side. McCaffrey 20 carries, 90 yards. And we talked about this Wednesday, didn't we, Ryan? That McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel were going to have big days, and they did. Deebo Samuel 8 catches, 89 yards, did not score. Same McCaffrey, 2 touchdowns with the 90 yards, a 4.5 yard average. So you look at these, you look at the stats, and you're like, wow, because on the other side, too, Sam Laporta, 97 yards. We talked about that. We talked about Detroit to win this game. They had to rush the ball, and they were going to have to go to Laporta. They did. Everything we said both teams needed to do, they both did. The difference was 1 key turnover, by the Lions, and then the questionable calls by Dan Campbell. Also, clock management towards the end of the game, especially the third quarter. The Lions were taking their time. Their offense wasn't moving great, and they kept taking their time. So, look, credit Dan Campbell for everything he's done to get the Detroit Lions where they were. But in a big game like this, there was more questions about could Shanahan get past an NFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl than there were maybe about Dan Campbell making his first appearance. But boy, down towards the end, I think they made critical errors. The turnover is a turnover, and it led to San Francisco scoring a touchdown. That aside, the failure to take the field goal, the game ends up being a 3-point game. Now, we don't know if it would have ended that way. There might have been something else that happened. We don't know if San Francisco scores that touchdown, if they don't get the ball, and all kinds of things like that. But I think that the questionable coaching and the I think a lack of urgency in the second half, going for it on first or fourth down when you're in field goal range, when you're up by 14 points, it's hard for me to see. I don't care what stats say. I don't care how successful he's been. This is the NFC Championship game. Am I wrong there?
No, I agree, because I didn't. The first one I didn't hate, but I definitely didn't love because, like you said, up 14, they make that, they push it to 3 scores. So that one, it's a 3 possession game then, which is huge. And 2, it's, you're in San Francisco. You don't want to give them momentum and by stopping you, and then they have momentum, they got to score. It's a 1 possession game then. So I absolutely did not like that. Would have definitely preferred to see a field goal kick. And I know these are decisions made in real time in seconds, and everyone on their couch is like they know. But I think anyone could know, like at that moment, like, no, kick the field goal, push it to 17 points. The second one, though, was the real egregious one when you're getting late in the game and again go for it, which is even a more makeable field goal. And then that's the one that they don't get either. And then the Niners are able to salt a lot of the clock away, go score more points, and then the Lions score and bring it within 3. But that was the other one that they would have tied it. They were down 3 at that point. That would have tied the game back up. And then, see what your defense can do. But at least even if they allow a score, they still are in the game and can go score to tie it again. So the second one was the real one that I was like, wow, that's really, really poor coaching decision-making on that one.
Yeah. And listen, I'll give credit. Brock Purdy came alive in the second half, clearly. And again, you look at the stats, blow them, and stats don't tell the whole story. I get that, right? But if you looked at these stats, Ryan, Brock Purdy, 20 of 31, 267, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 89. Jared Goff, 25-41, 273, touchdown, no interceptions, 88 passer rating. So Brock Purdy, not a great first half, balls out in the second half. Jared Goff balls out in the first half, doesn't do much in the second half. I mean, it's crazy how a football game can change so quickly. Now, I look at the 49ers, and look, you talked about it at the top of the show. The stats about them trailing late in games. They were 1-31 going into the fourth quarter, down by 7. They go into this game, and again, they're down big after the first half, and you're like, uh-oh, here we go again. And they find a way to do it. So they've kind of exercised that demon a little bit. But I also, going against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I would be a little bit concerned, just because, like, how often can you start slow and recover from it? Now, they've done it 2 games in a row. All the credit in the world. Amazing performance the last 2 games to come back from that. But I would be a little concerned heading in the Super Bowl because that now you got a 2-week break. But to me, that's just a little concerning, seeing that a team that talented is coming out in those big games slow.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that even more with the matchup with the Chiefs and when we first talk about Chiefs Ravens. But here's the thing, and I give the Niners the flowers already, so I don't need to talk them up. I don't want to turn this into any negative talk because they won the game and they deservedly, so. But the Detroit Lions forgot how to play football in that second half. I mean, as good as the Niners were able to execute and handle their own, the defense looked out. I mean, you had 2 critical drops from Josh Reynolds. You have the fumble. You have obviously the coaching decision making with 2 field goals. You had other drops happen throughout the game. You had a couple miscues here. I mean, they just forgot everything they were doing well in the first half. They did the polar opposite in the second half. So yes, the Niners played great. They executed, but the Lions basically gift wrapped it to him and said, here, take it. And I don't see Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs doing that in the second half of the Super Bowl, which we'll talk about. And obviously it's their second matchup in whatever it is, 3 or 4 years that they've played in the Super Bowl. So to your point, yeah, I mean, I don't think the Chiefs will do that. It was honestly shocking what a different team the Lions were, and rightfully so, the Niners too, from first half to second half. But to be that good in the first half and to be just not able to play the game of football in the second, it was shocking.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, the giving up 27 second half points. Obviously, the defense of the Lions also crumbled, and Brock Purdy put up 315 yards in that second half. And Christian McCaffrey, by the way, that 90 yards rushing, but he also had 132 from scrimmage total. So you look at that and and it is, I mean, there's no other way to say it. Like you said, I mean, Dan Campbell Lions had a great season. I know the people of Detroit are really upset right now, and I'm sure disappointed, but it was a collapse in the second half. It was reminiscent. I mean, that was the Super Bowl. It was reminiscent though of the Atlanta game against the Patriots in the Super Bowl when they collapsed in the second half. Of course, again, that was a Super Bowl. This was an NFC Championship, but it reminded me a little bit of that because it was just such a stark difference to see the Lions 315 yards and then come out and only get 120 some yards in the second half of total offense. So the offense shut down, and the defense got tired too. They were on the field a lot more in the second half. And so unfortunately comes to an end. So now the 49ers get ready to go to Vegas, and the 49ers will meet in Vegas the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, again, we talked about this, Ryan, on Wednesday, that the Ravens should win the game. The Ravens should win the game. The Ravens had a great season, that team, that defense, Lamar Jackson having an MVP season, leading the league in rushing. They go out against the Kansas City Chiefs, and guess what? They didn't, after the 5-minute mark of the second quarter, they never ran the ball again. They gave 3 carries total to Andrews. I just don't understand what they were thinking. So you look at the Lions and the kind of coaching and mistakes that happened in the second half there. You look at the Ravens and losing 17-7 to the Chiefs. Boy, a couple things. We start with that. I don't understand it because I look at this and I say, wait a minute, you are the leading rushing team in the league, and after the first quarter, you completely abandon the run. How does that happen, Ryan?
No, and that's their identity too. I mean,
yeah,
that's like
exactly
who they are. And I don't know if Todd Monken, I really have no idea. It wasn't like this game was ever out of hand. I mean, the final score was 17-10. I mean, it's like, it was never like where they were down 2-3 scores and you had to all of a sudden pass. And Lamar Jackson's going to probably win the MVP. And we've talked about how great he is as a quarterback, how much we, root for him and how much we believe he is one of the premier elite quarterbacks in this game. And he does, not just because of athletic ability, but he's a much better pocket passer than given credit for. But your identity is running the football. And I don't care who you play, that's your identity. And then you put on top of that, as you mentioned, the Chiefs gave up 182 yards on the ground last week, and that's been their one weakness. Their secondary is like their strength. I know Chris Jones is up front, but their secondary with Snead and those guys on the back end, that's their strength. And they decided, you know what, we're just going to attack that. And even watching Lamar struggle throughout the game, they just kept doing it when they weren't down that much.
I know.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I mean, and this is why you joked about it at the top about the NFL being scripted. And believe me, I had a lot of people up on X tweeting that at me after this game. Oh, see, it's fixed. But you look at Edwards in that game, 3 carries, 3 for 20 yards. And in those 3 carries, by the way, he was averaging almost 7 yards a carry. And then you just stop, right? You just stop. And Lamar Jackson, 20 of 37, 272, 1 touchdown. Of course, the big interception towards the end of the game there. But you look at this game and you just think to yourself, how does, again, How does a coach like just completely abandon what made you get there in the first place? It's inexplicable. I'm angry for the people in Baltimore because you have this team. They're at home for the first time since 1971, which I know they were the Colts then, but nonetheless, they are home for the first time hosting the AFC Championship game with the best team they've had since the Ray Lewis years, of course. And you just completely, it's almost like they wanted to lose. I mean, it sounds crazy. That's where the scripted stuff comes from, Ryan, because how do you run the ball 3 times with your top running back? How does that happen? It blows my mind.
I don't get, I mean, we talk about it all the time. I talk on my shows too, on the LA shows, like for whatever reason, as smart as these coaches are, and I like to be respectful and say, I'm not smarter than these coaches. Like I haven't tried to coach in the NFL or college or even at a high school level. So I'm not going to sit here and say like I know everything, but there's sometimes when common sense needs to take over. And when you have an identity of one thing, when the game of football is predicated on balance and your quarterback is clearly struggling, it's one thing if he's out here throwing dimes and they're moving the football, then great, don't run the ball. But they weren't efficient. They weren't moving the ball. They couldn't get anything done. He was getting pressured. He was getting hit a lot. He had to scramble a lot. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like that's where, again, neither you or I believe this is true. But that's why talking about the script is funny, because it's like, are these coaches just laying down? Are they getting like a pay bump to lose? Like it just doesn't make any sense when you see what the Lions did, when you see what the Ravens did. And we said all along, if they're going by the script, it's going to be Niners Chiefs, because that's what the NFL wants, is those two teams.
Yes.
And that's what we got.
Well, and that's the thing. You look at that. You look at the fact that they don't go with what makes them strong. You talked about Todd Monken. I mean, it's crazy to think that, like, how does that person, I don't understand. I don't know how the head coach. So you got to look at John Harbaugh too. Yeah. Right. And you got to say, hey, John, I know he's your offensive coordinator. He does the play calling, but you don't step in when you see this is happening. That's what I don't get. Maybe it's just because you get so insular on that coaching staff and hey, it's what we got here. But yeah, you got there because you were doing everything opposite of what you did in this game against the Chiefs. And so that just throws me. Of course, they had 3 turnovers too. That didn't help. Yeah. So you talk about scripted and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is Lamar Jackson, again, in a big game, and we talked about this too before, which is I love Lamar Jackson as a player, but Lamar Jackson doesn't win big games. And I was getting in a discussion with somebody online during the game. They're like, well, some of his coaching. I said, no, a lot of it was coaching. Trust me, he was struggling and they kept asking him to do the same thing over and over again. At the same time, he's like, well, Tom Brady had bad games too. And I pointed out Lamar Jackson has now been in 6 playoff games in his career. Okay. Yeah. He's 2-4 in playoff games. Tom Brady started off his career 10-0 in the playoffs. So don't compare. And first of all, comparing him is ridiculous anyway. Yes, every quarterback has bad games, and Tom Brady lost playoff games too, but he started 10-0. So there's no comparison there starting out that way. And Lamar Jackson, ran for 54 yards. Okay, so it wasn't a massive running day for him under his standards. But Ryan, the thing I noticed, and I don't know if you did too, I just noticed he was taking forever to get rid of the ball the entire day. Now, give the Chiefs credit. That defensive backfield for the Chiefs has been on fire. They've been really, really good. But Lamar Jackson held the ball too long, should have ran at certain times, got sacked. And so I look at that and it's just, I don't know what it is. It's like Clayton Kershaw. You're an LA guy in the playoffs for baseball. You just I don't know what it is about some of these guys. They're so good and so talented. And for whatever reason, in the big game, it just goes to hell.
I mean, that's what separates the good from the great, right? And that's why when you talk about the great quarterbacks, there's basically 1 in the NFL right now, and there's 10 all time. When you talk about the all-time greats, Lamar Jackson's extremely good, great regular season, but we can't put him in that great yet until he does it in the playoffs. And there's a lot of guys who can't. We can't put Josh Allen there. We can maybe put Joe Burrow there, like we've talked about, but in reality, he's been injured 2 of 4 seasons, so he's done it twice. Great, but he's only been healthy twice. It's Mahomes, and that's about it in the league right now as it stands. And we could argue some others, but the other thing, Scott, that I'm curious your take on this. This is not like, I don't know 100%, but we're just here talking. But this is something I always think about because, and I don't hear this talked about a lot, but when you talk about the great quarterbacks and you talk about Brady and Manning and Elway and all these guys. And you see them it's so fun with all the access we get now with all these guys being on podcasts and telling stories. And, when a quarterback gets a play call in the huddle, they're usually given 3 to 4 plays, and then they check down, or they'll just stick with the play call, or they'll have check with me's or different audible calls at the line of scrimmage. And so when you see a lot, and Manning, we see this all the time, right? Like he'd get like 3 or 4 plays and he'd just like orchestrate up at the line of scrimmage and choose based on the defense what he was doing. So I wonder sometimes, and this is just, when you think about the Ravens and the run game, and I'm not putting this all on Lamar, but just a talking point, right?
Yeah.
If you know that something's not working, even with obviously there's ego and pride that you want to prove that you can put the team on your back, like as the quarterback, you have the capability to call a run play at the line of scrimmage. If you see the defense is like running a light box, you can check out of whatever the play call is and run a run play. You can recognize like we've run the ball 3 times to our starting running back. Like we should probably be a little bit more balanced. And if my OC is not going to call it, I'm going to check out of it and call it at the line of scrimmage. Pat Mahomes, I'm sure a lot of the times got more passing plays. Isaiah Pacheco ran the ball 24 times. He had 24 carries. I'm sure some of those were probably audibles at the line of scrimmage based on light boxes or what they were given. So I'm basing this purely on speculation and just my own thought process. But sometimes we put all the blame on, and I'm not saying you, just in general. It's like the OC, the play callers. But on the field, the quarterback is the CEO, and that's why they get paid the most. That's why they're the ones that, live by the sword, die by the sword. And sometimes like, well, maybe they could do more at the line of scrimmage to ensure some balance. Now, I don't know what it's like in the locker room or between those guys or whatever, but at the professional level, if Joe Vanderbeek can do it in Varsity Blues, I think Lamar Jackson could have done it in the AFC title game.
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind. And that's the thing. I think, the questions about Lamar Jackson now will not go away. And people will cry about it and say, well, what does he have to do? He has to win a big game. I mean, to your point about Joe Burrow, I agree with you. I don't put him in the great category either because of the reasons you mentioned, injured. But he did go to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs for the AFC Championship, right? And he did it twice. He went there twice. So he went to the Super Bowl, and I think that's again what's going to escape until Lamar Jackson can get to that point. There's going to be the question marks of whether or not he's just a very good quarterback, a very good regular season quarterback. We've seen that before with quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Unable to get to the big game or even past the NFC or AFC Championship game. But I'll tell you what, this Ravens loss is really interesting because the what am I trying to say here? The fallout, excuse me. Gosh, I got to spit it out there. The fallout will be interesting with the coaching staff just because, look, the guys went out and they're played, but I think if you look at what happened here in coaching, it's bad and both sides. And I did see, just to update everybody, Dan Campbell in the post-game press conference when asked about the second 4th down, so towards the end of the game, he said, quote, "I don't regret the decisions. I understand the scrutiny I will get. That's part of the gig." He said he was trying to get the upper hand back and he felt good about his offense converting. Well, there you go.
I'd hope he'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you would say. What else are you going to say? Damn it. I should have gone for the field goal. Although he could have maybe, but I'll tell you what, if you look at Brock Purdy too, back to the 49er game, he's just the 8th quarterback in NFL history to start a Super Bowl within the first 2 seasons of his career. Also, obviously the last player selected in the draft, and he's the first one to start in a Super Bowl as the quarterback. So some stats, we'll have all of that. Of course, we're going to have lots of coverage up on sportsnaut.com and all over the place. So you'll be able to see here, and we'll be on, of course, Wednesday. We got 2 weeks. You're going to be on Radio Row next week. Is that correct?
Yes.
At the Super Bowl?
A week from
Wednesday.
This week. Yeah. A week from Tuesday, I will arrive in Vegas. So
nice.
The 6th through the 9th, your boy will be at Mandalay Bay in Vegas on Radio Row.
There you go. So we will have you there, which will be great. But let's now talk about this matchup. You look at the 49ers and the Chiefs. Right now, the Chiefs are 3-point favorites, right? No, did I see that right? The 49ers are 3-point favorites. Sorry. Yeah, the 49ers are 3-point favorites going into this game in the early line. I'm sure that'll change a little bit, although I don't anticipate it'll change much unless there's some injuries or something we don't know about. But again, 49ers have that roster. Not surprising to me that they're in the Super Bowl. But this Chiefs team seems to play Travis Kelce as much as I'm tired of seeing him in a million commercials and everything like that. Travis Kelce in the playoffs, man, you can hate him all you want, but the guy just performs. He just gets it done when it matters most.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into the matchup over the next 2 weeks, obviously, so we won't dive in deep right now, but I have a hard time betting against Mahomes and Kelce. And it's, whatever it is. And that Chiefs defense, man, I mean, holding for all the mistakes the Ravens made, for, as we talked about, the running game and the play calling and how bad Lamar is, part of that is due to that Chiefs defense and how good they've been all year long, and hold another elite offense to 10 points. And, the way this Niners offense has looked against good defenses, they haven't looked great. I mean, their 3 losses came against good defenses in Baltimore, in Cleveland, and others. And Detroit, if we're being honest, Detroit is not like a great defense. They gave up the most passing yards, or the bottom 3 passing yards in the entire league. In the last 3 games before this game, they gave up 350 plus yards to the last 3 quarterbacks they played. And so it wasn't like they were going up against, the steel curtain. And this Chiefs defense is actually legit. So I think this 49ers offense is probably going to struggle. And, I just have a hard time betting against Mahomes the way he's been playing.
I know. And it's one of those situations where I think you look at the Lions, they did so well this year at times, just like every team, they go through their little bumps in the road. But if you look at them, I think that, you look at that roster and you say, there's some work they can do there to become better. They're already a good team. But I think that you see it in games like this, to your point about the defense, where if you just short up that defense a little bit, it's a big difference. You make one stop here, one stop there. Even if your offense doesn't do well in that second half, you might come away with that win there on the road. Yeah. So I think that's where we're at with the Lions and the Ravens. I don't know. I think the Ravens had everything they needed to win, and they just didn't do it. Other side of the thing we heard about, and I warned people, right? Because I do the Raiders show. And Raider fans, they're done. They're done. The Chiefs are done. They're not. No. And I warned people. I said, listen, as long as you got that guy at quarterback, they call him Kermit the Frog because I think he sounds like Kermit the Frog. But I said, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, it doesn't matter. And Travis Kelce in the declining years of his career comes up big in the games. And so you have to look at that. And look at the Chiefs offensive line too. Yes, they gave up a sack and a half, but man, they gave him all the protection he needed all day as well. So that team on offense, even without receivers, although you look at Rashee Rice, of course, and Scouting. Why am I forgetting his name now?
MVS. Yeah.
MVS. Yes. Thank you. Jeez. Hello. Long day. Yes. Valdez-Scantling. Thank you. So he had a good game. He's come along in the last 3 games going into the playoffs. So you look at that team and you're right. It's hard to bet against them. It's hard to say that, 49ers will win. And the line is 3. You would expect it to be somewhat close. But at the same time, man, I think it's going to be a good game between those 2 teams. And I know we're going to talk about it over the course of the next couple of weeks and what's going on there. But, and then we have to deal with, of course, Taylor Swift.
Yes, we will. I wonder if maybe I'll run into her at a Super Bowl party out in Vegas. So see how big her entourage and security team is.
Yes.
Quickly, Scott, one last thing I kind of want to say, because we talked about it during the season.
Yep.
And as much as it annoys me and pains me, this is why the MVP award is almost solely given to the quarterback. Because we talked about a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, maybe, about how Tyreek Hill should be the MVP. And I still think he's deserving of it. I'm not backing up on that statement.
Or Christian McCaffrey.
I absolutely believe that. But just in regards to the Chiefs, we talked about, look at this Chiefs offense. Yes, they're winning games, but it's because their defense. Mahomes is having a declined year. The offense is way declined. And what's the big factor there is no Tyreek Hill. All of that's true. But at the end of the day, if you have an elite quarterback like Mahomes, it doesn't matter. They're winning 17-10. So yes, a lot of it is solely based on the great defense, but that's why quarterbacks win it. Because at the end of the day, if you have a great quarterback, they overcome those obstacles. They might not put up elite numbers. They might not put up show-stopping, statistical anomalies. But when push comes to shove and you need points when it matters most, when you got the better quarterback, typically you win. And that's why they usually win the MVP.
Well, and quarterbacks in general. I mean, you look at the guys in the playoffs, right? I mean, you look at even going back to the wild card round, with the exception of maybe Joe Flacco, who had a nice end of the year, even though he's at the end of his career, basically. coming back, I should say, from the end of his career.
Mhm.
But you look at that, and that's what I always say. I argue with folks on our Raider show all the time about you need a dynamic playmaking quarterback. And then some people are like, well, look, they have Lamar Jackson. They didn't win. They were in the AFC Championship, though.
Yeah.
Right. So, yes. So to your point about being a great quarterback versus being one of the greatest quarterbacks, you elevate. But Lamar Jackson, yes, he didn't win the big game, but throughout the season, how many games did he take the team on his shoulder? And in fact, in today's game, I thought the Ravens were just sitting back, letting Lamar try to win the game by himself. And you can't do that. That's not what we're saying. But consistently, you see guys like Mahomes, Brady, Manning, the great ones. What they do is at times when their team is maybe not playing their best, they do take their team on their shoulders, even if it's for the stretch of a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And they elevate the play of everyone around them. And that's the key. Because yes, wins are not a quarterback stat. Wins are a team stat. But a quarterback that is great, like a Mahomes, like those guys that I mentioned, they do elevate the guys around them. They are natural born leaders who have an extra little something that gets people in the huddle, and then they go out and perform it physically as well.
Yeah. And that's why I always, I won't put him above Brady because of what he's done with,
Right,
never
of
be
course.
replicated. But that's why I always have John Elway as like my top quarterback, not named Brady, because everyone will point to, well, look at his numbers. Like he never led the league in passing. Like he only had one MVP. And it's like up until 95, when Shanahan came to town, you get that roster. That was a doo-doo Broncos team that he went to 4 Super Bowls with because solely him leading that team. So, but yeah, that just goes to show, like when you have an elite quarterback, you can maybe not win the whole thing, but you can at least get there.
Yes. Unbelievable. Well, that's the championship weekend. I mean, look, with 2 good games overall. I mean, I think the Kansas City game was a little disappointing, obviously, because I think everybody was, especially the way it started. It started so fast, 7-7. And I thought I was texting a friend of mine. He's like, "Are you watching this?" I go, "Yeah, I'm working." And he said, "This game is crazy." I said, "Yeah, I know." It was like the first 10 minutes and it was just a track meet with the long passes, everything was going on. And then it devolved into what it devolved into. But I do think the matchup, we expected this matchup. If you would have asked me, I thought the 49ers would be overrated. That was wrong about that. They got to the Super Bowl. But if you would have told me back in September, yeah, I think it's going to be the 49ers versus Chiefs, I would have said, yeah, that makes sense. And so here we are as we get ready for the first Super Bowl ever in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. Yeah. It's going to be the 49ers and the Chiefs. We're not going to do picks. We're going to do it because we're going to get into this game on Wednesday. And then, of course, we'll be with Ryan the following Wednesday of Super Bowl week, where we'll do a big preview, and maybe he'll even be able to grab a guest while he's sitting there while those people walk by. Taylor Swift will be our special guest on. Just kidding.
There we go. Maybe fake Andy Reid is a better likelihood.
Fake Andy Reid would be good, yes. Or that Chiefs mascot that was robbing banks, the raccoon or whatever he is. Maybe he'll stop by.
The rat, I think. Yeah,
the rat.
Yeah,
rat would be appropriate. But
maybe
that's
like Ocean's 14 if he comes to Vegas.
Ocean's 14. Oh, Ryan's climbing underneath the Bellagio looking for the safe. Uh-oh. I don't want you to do that, brother. You got wife and kids.
But I could use like $27 million. So, never say never.
That's too funny. All right, my man. Well, listen, that's a quick recap for our NautZone on this live Sunday after the AFC and NFC Championship game. So we appreciate you guys being with us. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll be talking about, obviously, the fallout from these games. We'll have some more coaching hires, right, Ryan? We still got some openings now that 2 more teams are out of the Super Bowl, including Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions, who looks like he might be the Washington Commanders coach. We'll have a lot of coaching news this week as well.
Well, I feel like, I think we'll probably be done with coaching hires because it seemed like the only teams people were waiting on the interview were the Lions and the Ravens. And so now they're both done. There weren't really any Niners or Chiefs coaches that were real big candidates. So I think by next Wednesday, all coaching jobs will be filled, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's 2 left, right? Seattle and Washington.
Yep.
That's it. Seattle's an interesting one because I still say it's going to be Dan Quinn. I still say it's going to be Dan Quinn. How could it not be Dan Quinn? But you never know, right?
Dan Quinn, or I would still probably go Vrabel if I was them.
Vrabel, yeah. We'll see what happens there. But it's going to be a fun week, and we will be back. So make sure if you're watching us for the first time, do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe here to the YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on X or Facebook, great. Like the Facebook page or head over to the YouTube page because that's where most of our videos are, and you can find us there, as well as follow Sportsnaut on TikTok. You can also follow us on Instagram. We're on Snapchat. And don't forget, if you're a displaced Angelino and you want to read about USC with recruiting heating up, did a big trip this weekend, I believe, Ryan, isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Big recruiting weekend this weekend.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it was like 70 degrees down there. So,
Beautiful.
Hey, that's some kid from some cold states can be like, yeah, where do I sign?
Yeah,
but if you want to learn about LA football, if you're into the college or the pros with the Rams and the Chargers, make sure you go check out the LA Football Network, where you can catch Ryan's work as well as he is. We go all between the sites. We're all a big, happy family.
One big family. We are family. Love it.
We're doing all that. Ryan, my man, I will see you Wednesday at 4:00 Eastern, 1 Pacific.
Always a pleasure, Scott. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, or what's left of it.
Yeah, exactly. I got about an hour and 20 minutes left of the weekend. All right. For everybody here at Sportsnaut, do us a favor. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the notifications bell. Do us another favor. If you want to read the coverage of tonight's game, we got some really good stuff. The guys worked really hard tonight on all of these games to be up to speed. There's some great content up on sportsnaut.com where you can see the latest and greatest from the NFL and all of sports. So make sure you do that. Sign up for the newsletter. That way you get it every morning. You can click through the stories that matter to you. So, all right, for everybody here, have a great night, and we will see you all on Wednesday.